Hello and welcome to video 4, the final video in the Design a Life Worth Living series. I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And I'm super excited about this final conversation that we're going to have, which is all about finding your guides and allies and really acknowledging the support that you have around you and looking for the places where maybe you need some additional support and mentorship on your heroine's journey. So in video number 1, we talked about just paying attention and noticing where are you on your heroine's journey? What's happening internally in your life, which is probably manifesting externally as well. And it might be showing up in terms of emotions or job changes or relationship changes. There's a lot of things that could be going on that are just signs of where you are on the journey and that it's time to create something new and different. And in video number 2, we talked about mapping the next stages of your heroine's journey, which was all about alignment and congruence, about your core values, about starting to reclaim some of those lost parts of yourself. And in video 3, we talked about identifying the parts of self that are showing up to support you or maybe even to get in your way. We talked a little bit about using journaling and the journey circles process in order to start to get a little bit of clarity around the parts of self. What do they have to say to you? What do they need from you? What are they here to teach you in this moment? And in the final video today, I want to talk about finding your guides and allies. So if you haven't guessed by now, I think maybe I talked a little bit about dragons in the last video, or maybe that was in a different iteration. I can't remember, but let me tell you, I love dragons. I don't know what it is about them, but since I was a child, I have loved mythology, symbolism, and fantasy all the way through to today. I'm a Game of Thrones fan. I love anything with dragons. And I realize that dragons often symbolize protection for me, and they symbolize strength. And when you come from a childhood where you feel like you need some protection and strength, you start to look for the symbols. But also, what in me represents the fire-breathing dragon, the strong mama bear, fierce protector of her family? So this stuff can be really fun and playful. It doesn't always have to be super serious. And sometimes the guides and the allies that show up on our journey are real, and sometimes they're mythological symbols that are showing up repeatedly and that we begin to notice. Like I recently just completed a painting of a phoenix. And a phoenix is a bird that rises and dies over and over and over again with the rising and the setting of the sun. And from the ashes, the phoenix rises. And I love the imagery and symbolism of that. I love Harry Potter, another great example of stories that represent Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all stories that represent the traditional hero's journey. And remember how we said at the beginning that the hero's journey is a little bit different than the heroine's journey. When you start to map out all of these stories really since the time of Plato, right? This is old school stuff here. The hero's journey is very linear, even though it looks like a circle. It goes through very specific stages. But what's unique about the heroine's journey is that we cycle around these stages. We bounce back and forth between them. It's not a linear journey. And we often might believe that we're alone on the journey, but really we're not. We have more supporters, guides, and allies than we often think we do. So I want you to think for a minute about what we talked about in video 4 and the different roles that you're playing. And who's on your team when it comes to playing those different roles? Like right now, one of the women that I'm really grateful for having in my life is one of my drumline mom friends, right? Who we were co-organizers for Drumline, for Winter Drumline, which is something my daughter and my son have both participated in. And I love that I don't have to organize this all by myself. So I completely see her as an ally in the mom role that I'm playing in my life. And in my business role, I have my husband and I have coaches and I have mentors and I have girlfriends and colleagues and collaborators that support me on the journey. And on my personal journey, I work with a depth coach that helps me really dig into the parts of self that we talked about. And I have found over the years that asking for help was something I wasn't really very good at, and I had to learn. It was easier to think about the mythological dragon being my fierce protector than reaching out and asking for support. And as I've gotten older, the more conscious and present to my resistance to asking for help, I realize in the moments when I get most stuck is when I'm not reaching out and asking for support. And I see this with so many of my clients that I tend to be very strong, high-achieving, professional women with a lot of potential, but they get themselves stuck because they believe they have to do it a certain way, or they believe that they have to do it by themselves, that they're not going to be supported by the people around them. So I'd invite you in your workbook or in your journal to just pause for a moment and think about who's on your team. Might be a spouse, might be a friend, might be a parent or other family member. My grandmother, my favorite aunt were always members of my team growing up. Who's on your team? Might be a beloved pet that shows up to model what it looks like to experience unconditional love in your life. So think about who's on your team right now and just pause for a moment to be grateful for who's already showing up to support you. And in every heroine's journey, there needs to be a guide and a mentor at each stage of the journey. There's always going to be ogres and dragons that show up to take us out. There's going to be naysayers. There's going to be backstabbers. There's going to be people who are not our fans. Not everyone can like us as much as we'd love them to. It just doesn't happen that way. And if you think back to favorite school teachers, to mentors in university, to bosses that really supported and saw you for who you were, I bet there have been some amazing guides along your journey. And again, pausing for a moment and just expressing deep gratitude for the support of the guides and the mentors that have gotten you to where you are today. And I would like to share with you and offer to have a conversation with me, what I call a breakthrough to creative courage conversation. To courageous creative conversation. There is a fancy name for it and it's posted down below, and it just went right out of my head. So this is another example of how I so do not believe in perfectionism. I could stop this video right now and re-record it, but I want to be really honest and present with you on this journey. I'm not perfect, but I do believe in doing the work to meet ourselves on the journey with the aid of a guide or a mentor. And during this conversation, I'll help you to identify where you are in the journey, help you to really figure out where you're feeling out of alignment, how to get back into alignment. We'll look at some of those parts of self that we talked about in video number 3, and look at what's showing up to support you or to offer you maybe a little bit of a challenging lesson. And it would be my honor and my privilege to be a guide on your journey. I am by no means the only guide, but I might be the right guide for right now in the moment. And as I said in video 3, there are no strings attached. This is a free conversation, you and me, one-on-one, just connecting to figure out what's going on. And if it feels like we're a match, then I would also invite you to consider working with me and maybe joining one of my courses that I have coming up around this whole idea of designing a life worth living. So if you know that you're looking for a guide, you know you need some support, I'm bridging that gap between where you are and where you want to be. I'd love to play that role and have a conversation with you. So just click that button below. It will take you straight to my calendar. Like I said, no strings attached. There is a questionnaire to tell me a little bit more about yourself and what you have going on in the moment. And let's get on the phone. Actually, we'll get on Zoom probably so we can see each other and connect face to face. And let's have a heart-to-heart conversation. Let me be your guide in the moment so that you can finally design, not just design a life worth living, but fully step onto your heroine's journey path and make sure that you're moving in the direction of your dreams. I'll see you in the conversation.